Munah Pandey was born in Nepal on August 24, 2003, the only child of single mother Aminah Pandey Adhikari. In 2021, 18-year-old Munah left her mother in Nepal and moved to Houston, Texas to attend college. She initially lived with her friend who was also from Nepal, but later got an apartment of her own. She was described as a very kind and intelligent individual with a bubbly personality and an infectious laugh. In August 2024, 21-year-old Munah was a nursing student at the Houston Community College and employed at a local phone store. Unfortunately, the previous year, a man had begun stalking her. Terrified, she had a friend install a security camera above the door to her apartment. On August 24th, she had plans to go out with friends for her birthday, but never showed up. Her friends had been texting her that day, but became concerned when she suddenly stopped responding. The following night, the leasing manager at her apartment complex received a chilling call from someone who said they had a dead body in one of the units, but provided no further details. They most likely thought it was a joke and never notified the police. On Monday, August 27th, 3 days after her disappearance, friends went to her apartment to check on her. Upon entering, they found her dead inside and quickly called 911. When police arrived, they found she had been shot multiple times. A friend then told them about the security camera he installed for her, which would be vital in solving the case. In the footage, an unknown older man can be seen standing outside her door with a gun by his side. Munah approaches and can be heard asking what he plans on doing. He then racked the slide of the gun and asked her to open the door, which she eventually agreed to do. Once inside, he shot her to death before leaving with her purse. Investigators released the footage to the public, and the man was identified as 51-year-old Bobby Singh Shea. He was initially identified by the owner of a restaurant that Munah used to work at. According to the owner, Shea and he were in communication to start a business after he became a regular patron of the restaurant. He was even able to provide police with his driver's license information and phone number. The second identification came from a female who instantly recognized him from the website Sugar Daddy, a dating site meant for successful men who are financially well off and can provide the women they date with very nice gifts. On August 29th, not long after identifying him, he was arrested during a traffic stop and charged with Munah's murder. As of September 2024, the outcome of his case is still pending. Rachael Nicoletta Anderson was born to parents Bill and Trish Anderson on January 28, 1994, in Warren, Ohio. Rachael was involved in many activities in high school, including the band, volleyball, and soccer. After graduating from Warren G. Harding High School, she made plans to become a funeral director, and in 2016, she earned a Bachelor of Science from the Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science. While earning her degree, she worked at a funeral home and was a member of the Ohio Funeral Directors Association. After graduation in May of 2017, she moved to Columbus, Ohio, to work as an apprentice at the Shaw Davis Funeral Home and was almost at the end when a horrible tragedy occurred. During the last 8 months in Columbus, she mainly hung out with her friend from high school, Jonathan Kennedy, and his wife. On January 28, 2018, the night of her 24th birthday, Jonathan and his wife had a party for her. Her 20-year-old brother, John Anderson, had come into town for the weekend and planned to head back to Warren, Ohio, after the party was over. However, when he left, he accidentally took her key with him. So she went and grabbed the spare from Jonathan and his wife and returned to her apartment. Sadly, that was the last time they would ever see her alive. The following day, when she strangely failed to show up for work, the supervisor at the funeral home asked a coworker to run by and check on her. However, when he knocked on the door, there was no answer. So he went to the office and explained the situation. The manager then contacted the police, and they gave permission to search the apartment. However, nothing was found after a quick walkthrough. At this point, Jonathan had also become worried after not being able to get in touch with her. So he used one of the spare keys she had given him and entered the apartment. Once inside, he noticed that her bedroom was in disarray, as if a struggle had taken place. He then tried to open her closet door, but something was preventing him from opening it. After forcing it open, he shockingly found Rachael's body hogtied and partially nude. Turns out the door was being held by a cord from an electric blanket that was also attached to Rachael. She had sadly been beaten, strangled, sexually assaulted, and stabbed to death. The murder weapon, a 9-inch steak knife, was found by her mother 2 weeks after the murder in a box in her apartment. Thankfully, they were able to collect biological DNA. Missing from the apartment was Rachael's debit and credit cards, along with her vehicle. It wouldn't take investigators long to identify the suspect as Anthony Pandey, a career criminal who had spent 33 years of his life in prison. Once they had a name, they were able to track his cell phone, and it showed he was at Rachael's apartment from 7:59 to 9:25 p.m. on the night she was murdered. They also obtained surveillance footage of Pandey and his sister using her debit card. They also discovered that a homeless man by the name of Anthony Sleets had been using her credit card. When questioned, he said that Pandey had given him the card to use. Investigators were even able to obtain video of both Pandey and Sleets driving Rachael's car hours after she was murdered. However, before they could question Pandey, Sleets died. It turns out that when Rachael returned home, she walked in on Pandey burglarizing her apartment. He then put her through hell before finally killing her. Pandey has spent years in prison for numerous crimes, including the sexual assault of an 8-year-old girl in March of 1979 when he was only 14. A year later, while in foster care, he did the same thing to a 9-month-old. When he was 16, he sexually assaulted another 8-year-old. Next, he assaulted his girlfriend's mother before kidnapping her and trying to kill her. Thankfully, a Good Samaritan intervened and saved her life. At only 17 years old, he was convicted of aggravated robbery, sexual assault, and attempted murder and sentenced to 5 to 25 years in prison. He would only serve 24 years of that and was released in November of 2006. He then moved to Georgia and applied for a job under a false name. In 2007, he was arrested and charged with forgery and failure to register as a sex offender. After being convicted of that crime, he was sentenced to 9 years in prison, plus 20 years of probation, and required to wear a GPS ankle monitor. In 2017, he was released from prison again and returned to Ohio. The judge requested he be given an ankle monitor in Ohio, but they never did. In August of that year, he was caught with a prostitute. Then, on January 26, 2018, he was caught driving without a license. When he was pulled over, he was found with a pocket knife, a kitchen knife, and a pellet gun. For some reason, the officer didn't arrest him, even though he wasn't supposed to have those items in his possession. Sadly, Rachael was murdered the following day. On February 9, 2018, Pandey was arrested and held on a $5 million bond. He pleaded not guilty on all charges and refused to participate in court hearings. In December 2019, he wrote a letter to WBNS-TV claiming he didn't kill Rachael, or anyone for that matter, and blamed his past for his arrest. A month later, he dismissed his attorneys Isabella Dixon and Larry Thomas because he wanted to represent himself. He then changed his mind. In the end, he was found guilty on all charges. He was then sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder and the sexual assault. For the aggravated robbery charges and kidnapping, he was given another 63 years. Thankfully, he will die in prison and never be able to hurt another innocent person ever again. Teree Blair Becker was born on May 9, 1955, and grew up in Casper, Wyoming, with her parents, sister, and brother. She graduated from Kelly Walsh High School and worked at a local newspaper called the Golden Bell Press. After graduating, she moved to Denver, Colorado, where she stayed with friends and family. Teree was described as a free spirit who lived life on the edge. She was never known to meet a stranger and could hold a conversation with just about anyone. She also enjoyed painting and listening to her favorite bands, Three Dog Night and Steppenwolf. On December 4th, 1975, 20-year-old Teree decided to hitchhike to Brighton, Colorado to visit her boyfriend who was in jail. After visiting with him, she began hitchhiking home, but never arrived. 2 days later, on December 6, 2 men on motorcycles found her body in a field 10 miles north of Denver in Westminster, Colorado. An autopsy determined she had been sexually assaulted and strangled to death. Unfortunately, her case would remain unsolved for the next 48 years. While investigators worked the case over the years, it wasn't until 2013 that they had their first big break when the killer's DNA that had been uploaded to CODIS had a hit. It matched another sexual assault case and murder from 1991 that occurred in Las Vegas. Unfortunately, they didn't have a suspect in their case either, but if they could identify him, it would solve both cases. In 2018, investigators enlisted the help of Parabon Nanolabs and Solved by DNA, a local forensic genetic genealogist company in Denver. With the leads they provided, investigators were able to identify the suspect as Thomas Martin Elliott. Elliott was a career criminal who had spent much of his life in and out of prison. In 1975, not long before he murdered Teree, he was arrested for a burglary in Lakewood. He was convicted of that burglary and spent 6 years in prison. He was eventually released in Las Vegas in 1981. He then continued his crime spree and was arrested again for sexually assaulting a child. For that crime, he was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison. After being released in 1991, he committed the murder that ultimately led to the connection in CODIS. He then took his own life on October 30th, 1991, at the age of 40. Once he was identified, Las Vegas Metro Police obtained consent and exhumed his body. The DNA was sent off for analysis and confirmed the match. While justice was never served, Teree's brother David is thankful to finally have some long-awaited answers. Aminah Gathers was born on June 22, 2023, to parents Sandy Gathers and Sarah Constance Shakari Taylor in Ladson, South Carolina. Unfortunately, their home was a house of horrors, and poor little Aminah would never make it to her first birthday. On May 15, 2024, Sandy called 911 to report that 10-month-old Aminah was unconscious. He said he arrived home from work at 3 p.m. to find her face down on the edge of the bed with Sarah sleeping next to her. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital while trying to revive her, but it was too late, and she was pronounced dead on arrival. They initially weren't able to determine her cause of death because there were no apparent injuries found during the autopsy. However, when the toxicology report came back, it showed Aminah had a large amount of fentanyl in her system, and that was determined to be the cause of death. In order to determine how she ingested fentanyl, officers back at the scene collected Aminah's baby bottles, formula, a pacifier, and a $1 bill that was found with a powdery substance on it. When those items were tested, the pacifier and a bottle of formula tested positive for fentanyl. Sarah admitted to previously using fentanyl and admitted to knowing the dangers of it, but refused to provide a blood sample to determine if she had used it that day. While investigators were at the home, they also found evidence of dog fighting, including dogs tethered to the ground and caged pit bulls. In total, 14 dogs were found on the property. It turns out that Sandy and Sarah were running a dog fighting operation under the guise of an unlicensed kennel. 39-year-old Sarah was arrested and charged with homicide by child abuse, 3 counts of conspiracy, 3 counts of animal fighting or baiting, and 1 count of ill treatment of animals. 41-year-old Sandy was also arrested and charged with 4 counts of animal fighting or baiting, 5 counts of ill treatment of animals, 9 counts of conspiracy, a count of hindering an officer, and 15 counts of being a violent criminal in possession of a firearm. However, at this time, he has not been charged in his daughter's death, and as of September 2024, their cases are still pending. Emery Victor Marshall Patterson was born on August 19, 2021, to parents Gabrielle Marshall and Shane Patterson in Phoenix, Arizona. Before he was born, both his parents were investigated at least twice by the Arizona Department of Child Safety after another one of their children showed up to school multiple days in a row in 2019, smelling like marijuana. DCS investigated the allegations, but said they found no evidence to support the claims and closed the case. A few weeks later, on January 30th, 2020, DCS received another report. This time, Shane and Gabrielle were being accused of having drug paraphernalia, weapons, and illegal drugs in the home. The allegations also claimed that the house was beyond filthy and being neglected. Once again, DCS claimed they found no evidence to support the allegations and once again closed the case after offering the family some in-home services. Fast forward to 5 days after the birth of Emery, when DCS received another report that he was born with methadone and fentanyl in his system. Since there was proof of this, DCS required them to participate in an in-home service. After that, just like all the other times, the case was closed. Over the next 13 months, Emery would spend his days allegedly being abused and neglected. Then, on September 19, 2022, Gabrielle called her friend and said that Emery had gotten into some of her pills and was unresponsive and she needed some Narcan. However, the friend told her multiple times to call 911, which she finally did. When EMTs arrived, she told them that Emery had gotten into her stash of opiates. They quickly administered Narcan to reverse the effects, but sadly, it was too late, and he died from the overdose. A toxicology report would later reveal that he had ingested fentanyl. A neighbor would later tell police that she heard Gabrielle screaming, oh my God, no," multiple times. 2 months after his death, Gabrielle was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and child abuse. In the end, she pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 11.5 years in prison, followed by 10 years of probation.